watch the comment stream? Is that do people post to that, or should I watch the YouTube?
Absolutely. No, so here in the StreamYard interface, did it ask you, hello everybody, did it ask you to like log into your Google account or whatever, or connect it?
No, it just popped up. I'm just here. I haven't logged in.
Oh, okay. I think that there's a way through StreamYard to log in through the interface. If you go to that comment section, I believe it might give you, uh-oh, did I just lose you? Well, that's okay. He'll be back. Hello, everybody. We got Chet Haase working on some things here. You're not the only one to do that. I've even done it.
Wow. Way to log in, but I clicked on log in and it dropped me out entirely. So maybe.
They should warn you about that. Really.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll just stay logged out for this session then.
Yeah, but if you're logged in, then it actually shows kind of the comment stream in the little interface area.
Oh, okay.
So
all right.
Kind of keeps everything within. But yeah, you can do whatever you like if you want to just do it through the website or through the YouTube site or whatever. That's entirely up to you.
Actually, I do see somebody's comment on the comment stream within Streamyard now. So I don't know if that's,
would that be
same
Daniel?
thing as people on YouTube or yep.
Yeah. So so this one is coming from Twitch because I'm streaming to YouTube and to Twitch. So
you got all the
both directions.
Okay.
Yeah, a service like StreamYard makes it easy.
It's like wow. You need that as a sponsor thing. So
there we go. It makes it so easy.
Yeah.
I'm working on it. I think I'm a long ways away from getting sponsors of any sort. I mean, that's the challenge, right? Like I used to work for a company that it was a machine. It was machinery that surrounded me. So, if I created the content, then this person edited it and this person promoted it. And that person, understood the technology behind it to make sure that we could stream it live. And, it's a crazy situation going from having that machinery surrounding you to not anymore and figuring it out as you go. Yeah.
Connect my YouTube account. I'm going to click on a connect that will connect to YouTube. I hope it doesn't pop me out again. Let's see.
And if it does, don't worry about it. Just come on back.
Okay. Okay. So this looks better. Yep. Good. Yep. StreamYard can access my Google account. What could possibly go wrong? All right. Cool.
Cool. And then I think what that allows you to do is, through the StreamYard interface, you can actually post via your YouTube account, but it's kind of, all contained within the StreamYard interface.
Yeah. So. Okay, cool.
Kind of neat. All right. Cool. Well, Chet Haase, good to see you, man.
Hey,
good to see you like this
nice
too.
To see you again.
I'm stoked to, and sorry if you hear scurrying in the background. We've got a couple of dogs. One of them is a 10-month-old Bernedoodle, like full size, like 85-pound dog that has a ton of energy, and he runs through the place. So you might hear him skittering around.
Okay, wait, Apologies Burn. I haven't heard Burna before. I've seen a lot of doodles. In fact, I think there's about 1,000 just in my apartment building here, but
it's crazy. The doodle thing, the doodle thing's real. It really is.
It mixed with all kinds of things. Is that an organic material at Burna?
Bernese Mountain Dog.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, which is a fantastic breed. Probably my favorite breed of dogs.
Okay.
And
so you have like half of your favorite dog now.
Yes, exactly. Right. And actually, he's like half, because Bernese has beautiful colorings, beautiful markings, kind of browns and blacks and whites, and it's just very unique. And he has that quality from the Bernese. So he looks... Yeah, I mean, he looks like a true like mix between a Bernese, the colorings and the markings, and a poodle with the kind of like a little bit of the tighter kind of curls in the hair.
Yeah.
Unless we let it grow out and everything. Are you a pet person? Do you like
I am. We had a golden doodle for many years until last year. Okay. And then we had another poodle mix also until last year. And now my house converted to be a cat house instead. So
really?
Two cats at home, which is not home. It's a different home.
Have you ever had cats before?
When I was a kid, and then strangely, so I like went away to college and came back and realized I had a really bad cat allergy. So that kind of wiped cats from the map for me. And then decades later, I realized I no longer got allergic around cats, and I got tested, and it's not a thing. Apparently bodies change over time. Who knew?
Yeah, totally. We evolve. Yeah. So do our systems and everything. I think I'm right there with you. We're probably very similar stories because when I was a kid, cats, like I could like walk into a room and I wouldn't know anything about the people who live there. Like I wouldn't know anything about this room that I walk in, but I could walk in and in a second be like, oh, a cat has been here. Like, you know what I mean? Like I would have that immediate reaction of allergy to a cat, and it was just really miserable.
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of my life, I kind of like hated cats. I was taking my own frustrations out on cats because, I was allergic to them. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, actually cats are pretty cool. I just happen to have a thing that prevents me from being around certain types of cats. And as I've been older, as I've grown older, that has lessened. So very similar to you.
Yeah, it's good. I always thought the fix was going to be, maybe we'd get a cat, but we just have to shellac them and make sure we kept all that dander on the inside. But apparently,
yes, exactly. Yeah,
but
a lot of yeah.
It was an interesting change, though. Like I think of myself as a dog person, like ever since those early days, and in the last many years with my wife and family as my kids grew up. And I love having dogs in the house, but with cats, I always thought of them as rather antisocial, but they're actually social, but in a way that's less needy.
Yes.
Like they're like, hey, if you'd like to pet me, that's cool. And if you don't, that's also okay. As opposed to dogs who are just like so dependent on getting pet all the time.
I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with me now? What are we going to do now? Huh? I'm the most important thing in your life, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, that's my Bronson voice. I'm very, very studied and practiced in the Bronson voice. Sometimes it sounds like Forrest Gump, but it's just pretty fitting for his personality.
I think so.
Yeah. If you ever met him, and speaking of, he dug a really, really large hole in our backyard yesterday. So that was awesome. To match the 3 other holes that he's dug. Apparently he's a digger. Anyways. Chet Haase, for those of you watching and listening, Chet has been a part, my introduction to Chet and my knowledge of Chet has been the fact that you, for a very long time, were part of the team of Android and very integral, that's always a hard word for me to say, to the development of Android. And at least from my perspective, like I'd go to Google I/O and of course, I'm there to like see the keynote and kind of report on that and the podcast that I do and talk to people and everything. But you were always on stage. And not only that, you were on stage in like the keynote and making everybody laugh. Like that was just kind of like, that was what you knew about Chet, is he was probably going to make you laugh in the process. Like you're a funny guy and it comes across when you're on stage. So I guess it makes sense that you're doing what you're doing now, which we'll talk about.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it had that effect. I always thought, I try to have fun on stage. But there's an underlying purpose too, which is I've always thought like you can't educate anybody if they're asleep. And honestly, if you bore them with, marketing materials and very dry, like all this tech stuff can get very dry. But if you make it engaging and interesting in some way, then chances are they'll be paying attention when the actual important stuff drops. So there was a purpose to it, but also it was just kind of fun being there. And then, we did for many years. I was doing, with a mix of people like Romain and Dan Sandler, we were doing What's New in Android, which we always personally refer to it as the Android keynote. Nobody else did, but to us, it was the Android keynote. And then, things sort of shifted around more in recent years. And certainly with, COVID and events and, everything sort of going away from live events and then doing these hybrid things, everything got very confusing. But it was fun while it lasted.
I was actually just recently kind of going through old footage. I've got like all this footage from Twit and it's been on my list. Like, at some point I need to like pull some of this stuff. Cause like I probably need to make like a portfolio or something. That would be smart for someone who was recently laid off, to collect, kind of like these moments and these highlights and everything like that. And just kind of going through, I was reminded of the fact that during COVID, like basically the first Google I/O in COVID was entirely canceled, right? How did y'all react to that on the inside? Like that's a huge, that dev conference was an institution up to that point, still is. It's changed in the last handful of years because of COVID, I imagine. But I mean, to have it and then to have it completely evaporate for that year, that must have been a big kind of about face.
Yeah, it was very weird. On the other hand, everything was very
Everything was
weird
weird.
at that
Yeah.
time, and you were up for whatever you needed to do. Like, it obviously didn't make sense to get together live with people at a point when you weren't even allowed to go into the office. All the buildings were locked. You didn't even see close friends or family. You know, you're cooped up at home. Like, of course, we're going to cancel stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think we took that very much in stride. I think the harder part for me was when things started to come back and then it became a hybrid event. And then you didn't really we never got back to the Google I/O that I loved, which was the full on in-person event, right? Instead, it was sort of, there would be a smaller crowd there and we do some of the keynotes were live, but a lot of the content was done in videos. And I don't know, by the time I came out of the pandemic thing, I'd had enough of videos. I created a lot of videos because I was mostly in the DevRel team at that time doing outreach, which meant that instead of doing events, we were doing videos. So I created a lot and then we would all, watch these and we had all the online meetings. And by the time we were back to seeing people in person again without, fearing for our lives, then I really I didn't want to watch anymore. I didn't want to make any more videos and I didn't want to watch any more videos. And I felt the same probably applied to a lot of people. So I'm not sure that we had the level of engagement for hybrid events as we used to have for, the excitement of just everybody coming in for the live event, getting together with the community, the people you've known for years. You hear about the stuff, you talk about the stuff, go in between the venues, and like that level of energy, I don't think returned. I should make a point. Somebody on the comments is saying that your audio is a bit quiet. I don't know if you can adjust that.
Oh, I wondered about that. Thank you. I can adjust that.
So I'll speak to Marty's comment here. Marty asked how much prep went into what's new in Android talks. Great question. There was a fair amount. So what's new in Android was a mix for me of some of the most exciting stuff that we did, because this was the point where we would get the chance to tell people about all the stuff that we thought was new and interesting. And people would hear that for the first time, and you sort of have a bigger crowd tuning in, live and online and all that stuff. So all of that stuff was very exciting. On the other hand, in terms of the talks that I've created before, by far the most boring, in that it was basically a laundry list. I think we worked hard to try to, as we were saying, Jason, to make it a fun and engaging thing, and throwing in, quips from the side and anything we could think of, live, just to try to make it a more spontaneous event. We never scripted. This is kind of a thing that I do anyway. And Roman does as well. We don't script what we say. We just speak to the stuff that's on the slide and in whatever words come to us. But we would also, just think of things to toss in from the side because we were all comfortable enough on stage to do that with and to each other. But the talk itself was rather dull in that it was just a list, right? It was here are the following things that changed. There was no narrative arc to this talk. There was no, greater point that we were making. It was more here's what happened in the security team. And then the trick for us was to try to figure out because we were on the inside for so many years, we knew the people in the teams to go out to and say, hey, because there wasn't there wasn't a document anywhere that sort of held all the things. There were probably hundreds of documents that held that kind of information. But then how do you filter this information? I don't work on Bluetooth, so I have to go talk to the Bluetooth team to find out what is new and interesting, or whether, this was not the release where they really have stuff to talk about. And you sort of do these for all the obvious teams out there, and then hopefully people reach out to you. But really it was more of a pull thing where we would go do a little bit of research and then learn just enough. Maybe we would actually write some demo code so we understood enough about it to speak to it. Some of these areas, if we're talking about a security feature, none of us felt comfortable enough to, go write code about it and figure that out. It was just here's some important security stuff that you should go talk to the security team if you want to understand more. But the rest of it was we tried to come to some human understanding of what was new and interesting in the platform. And it was kind of fun to deliver that. But, each slide would just sort of stood on its own. So not the most exciting talk, but hopefully it was fun anyway.
Absolutely. I felt like it was always fun to watch you guys up on stage, you know, kind of going through that. And I imagine being, because part of what you're talking about is being on a stage in front of people, potentially, you know, a large room of people, feeding off the energy. And that really has me thinking about what you're doing now, which is, you know, for those who don't know, Chet is no longer with Google. You actually
Wait, what?
work. Am I telling you something you didn't already know?
Ooh, that would explain why I haven't gotten a paycheck in a couple of weeks. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I hate to break it to you, but 14 years in your role at Google. That's solid. You know what I realized? Nearly the same amount of time that I had my role at Twit. And I would say, you know, for a large part of that, I was aware of your kind of what you were doing at Google, and, you know, very used to seeing you on your presence in Google, both on the videos and on YouTube and at IO and everything. So I'd say, you know, pretty high profile position. A lot of people knew Chet as, you know, the guy from the Android team. How does that duration of time in that role at a company like Google, building up a product like Android that has this worldwide influence, how does that influence your own personal sense of identity, like of who you are? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really key question. So I spent my entire career in and around the Valley, working at companies there, you know, some of whom you've heard of, some of whom you haven't, or no longer exist, because that's what happens in the Valley. And
yes, it is.
that means, you know, I shift around jobs, you know, not too aggressively, but something interesting would come up and I'd go do that instead as engineers, especially in tech and especially in a high tech area like Silicon Valley. There's a lot of opportunity, except in downturns like today, where you just have these things come up. And so why wouldn't you try them and expand your skills and knowledge and, you know, community and network and all that stuff. And none of those were really difficult. It's like, yeah, you know, you love working with this team, but it's time to move on. And so you move on, you know, submit that letter and you close up the documents and out the door. And I would say leaving Google was by far the hardest thing I've done. And part of it is at the core of what you asked about, which is that identity. Like there was no other company. I would say Sun probably came the closest when I was at Sun Microsystems for, I think, 8 years total, including some contracting. And, you know, I was doing some outreach stuff there, but the amount that I was doing at Google, both working on the core platform as it was really coming into being, you know, from Gingerbread on, and then being part of that outreach, like that's kind of face of Android-ish stuff that I and some other people did. And then you get associated with this thing and then it really becomes part of who you are. So how do you leave that thing when it's part of who you are? And I had to kind of figure that out. In fact, I'm still figuring it out, right? That's actually part of being on this podcast and hopefully doing some other tech podcasts is like, I don't want to just drop it. Like it was a big part of my life, both my tech career overall, as well as being a part of Android and Google for the last many years. It's a shame to completely leave it behind because I really enjoyed what I was doing. I felt very strongly about, you know, the positive aspects of all of that stuff. So then how do I keep some sort of toe in that water while I'm doing something completely different?
Yeah, indeed. What is the, for those who don't know, what is the completely different? Because you're now living in a different place. You're not living, you know, near the campus of Google near Mountain View anymore. Yeah, and you're a student of what?
I'm a student of life, Jason.
Aren't we all?
I'm a lifelong learner. So it came up in the last couple of years that, you know, maybe I could be done. Like maybe it was time to do something new. I had started doing new stuff within Google. Like I'd switched over to DevRel for a couple of years, which was great. But, you know, especially given the lack of events during pandemic, maybe not the fun thing that I was hoping to continue doing. So then I came back to engineering and I did some stuff there. But after a while, I was like, well, I've kind of done the things here. And it's not like you're not learning new stuff. And it's not like you're not enjoying things. Hopefully Jason's still somewhere. He just
I'm flexing my video switching muscle.
But I wasn't doing new stuff, right? I'd done leadership stuff. That was great. I'd done a bunch of coding stuff, I'd done a bunch of graphics. I learned a bunch of tech. I was still learning tech, doing a bunch of Kotlin coding. Like all of that stuff was fun, but it was like, yeah, but like I've been doing this for decades, different versions of this, and life is only so long. And maybe there are other parts of me that would be fun to explore. And so in the last couple of years, I started to have this thought, but I didn't really have a better idea. And if I didn't have a better idea, my job was great. Like, why not continue working there? And then I started thinking about doing school again, because both my wife and I really enjoyed being an undergrad many years ago, and then in grad school a couple of years after that. Just the experience of focusing on stuff that you are interested in really challenges your mind, and allows you to be around other people that are similarly interested in this stuff. And so I started to toy with ideas at school. I thought, should I go back for another math degree? My undergrad was in math. Should I actually like learn it better this time around? Or could I go back and do computer science? Again, could I go back and learn it better this time? Like all of that stuff is interesting, but it also felt like work, right? Like I was already making the decision to sort of step away from work. And so those didn't feel quite right. And then my wife found this program in Chicago through DePaul. It's a screenwriting program with a concentration in comedy, working with Second City, who's like, that organization is one of the premier institutions of improv and sketch comedy in the country.
Indeed. Yes.
And I thought that is the thing that I would like to actually leave work for and see where this goes. It not only like sounded interesting, but I've been, for the past, 15 to 20 years, I've been doing increasing amounts of writing and comedy, like performance and comedy writing, and just sort of playing around as a hobby in both of these areas. And I thought, what would it be like to actually just take a couple of years and focus on this and see what else I could do?
Nice. Were you, when you were much younger, like a child, Chet, did you like school when you were a kid?
Yeah, I loved it. Total nerd. Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved it, and we get into this weird, probably not totally healthy habit, I think, in school of like, I want to work really hard on the thing, and then I need the grade from the teacher to verify and validate that I worked really hard and I did a good job. And like, I still have that. I actually still care whether I get an A. It does not matter at all. Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's because we strive to learn. Of course, it sounds like you're in the prime position where, and this was a position that I found myself in when I finally realized that I could go to school and learn about something I cared about. Like my younger years as a student, I had a really hard time connecting a lot of the time. I wasn't a bad student, but I wasn't an amazing student either. I was firmly a C grade student, in my childhood. And it wasn't until I was much older when I realized, like, oh, wait a minute. Education, it exists to allow me to explore the things in life that I want to do. And once I realized that, it became really easy. And, of course, it's nice to get the confirmation with the A's and all that kind of stuff. It tells you, at least to a certain metric, that you're on the right path. And so now you're returning to school. Now you're a student again. Like, how does it feel to like step back into that role? Because it is kind of crazy when you've been a professional for a few decades doing what you do, going back to that sense of identity. And now your new identity is you're kind of starting over to a certain degree.
Big time. Yeah. Nobody I'm here with, like, that I know socially or through school has any idea what I've been doing for the last many years, which is obviously different. Like, I go to any Android community event and like, people tend to know me for the videos or the conferences or whatever. It's like, there's an automatic sort of association with who I am and what I've done in that community. Well, you step away from that community, you got nothing. Like, you're starting over in a field that is not yours. Like, I'm comfortable writing, but I'm not a screenwriter at all. Like, everybody, all of my classmates, most of whom are decades younger than me, right? Like, I would say sort of mid-20s is the sweet spot for people coming back for this kind of program. And I'm also in class with a bunch of undergrads. Like, I have people talking about how happy they were to graduate from high school last June. And I'm in class with these people, and that's unusual. On the other hand, the people that are choosing this kind of program have been thinking this way and doing like screenwriting type activities for longer than I have, right? The writing that I've done is not that. And so I'm playing catch up in what is their domain instead. And that's an interesting thing. And I think it's like, there's two sides of that. There's a couple of questions in the comments I want to get to eventually. I'm just putting it out there so I don't forget. Yeah. There's two sides to that coin. One is that it's a bit terrifying and it's a huge ego blow, right? To be clear, and this is related to that identity thing too. Like if you build up an identity, you build up a level of respect and know-how and credibility having done this thing. And then you step into a new domain and you have none of that, right? And your ego feels that it's like a gut punch to your ego almost immediately. And it can take a very long time to recover. I'll let you know when I do. But on the other hand, I think it's very healthy. I think it's like change has always been good for me in general, like whether it was going to grad school originally or, you know, taking new jobs, learning new things, trying new things in your life. Like you do always start over in that thing. And then eventually you learn it to the point that you're happy with and you move on and try something new. And you feel better about like having done that. Like you reconvince yourself every time, like, oh, I guess my brain still works and I can do this stuff. You know, it's not true for everything, obviously. If I went off to, you know, be a gourmet chef, maybe that wouldn't work. But if you pick the things that you're actually interested and passionate enough about, then you can do those things. We can learn by practicing and doing them and being serious about these things. And it's really invigorating when you finally do. And I'm not there yet, but I'm at least in tune enough to be, you know, competent at the things that we're doing, the assignments for class and the writing that I'm doing for that. So all of that's fun.
Well, and part of that, you know, part of the challenge there too is, you know, when you're working at Google, like, I don't know how long it was that you were working at Google that you had that voice in your mind that was like, you know, maybe I am ready for a change, or maybe I can envision a future where a change, you know, is on the horizon. What does that look like? And kind of getting to the point to where you feel comfortable enough to step off the ledge to do that, which, you know, I can speak from my personal experience with Twit too. You know, there was probably a good 2-3 years leading up to the layoff that I had it in my mind that, like, you know, I'm pretty sure I don't work at Twit for the rest of my life. So if that is true, which I believe it is, what the hell am I going to do next? Because like, I've worked here so long, you know, again, going back to the identity, it was really hard for me to remove myself from who I saw myself to be, you know, in my mid to late 40s at this point, having worked at Twit so long, doing that particular thing. It was like, it takes a lot of, I would say it takes a lot of courage to walk away from something like that, or to decide, you know what, that can live on as the experience that it was. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to start fresh. And yeah, you learn a lot about yourself in the process. And
it's not for everybody. Like if you are loving what you're doing, well, there's no reason to leave. It's not like everybody has to leave to have a fulfilling life. It's more that, you know, if there's other things that you enjoy, like one of the thoughts that I had when I was finally deciding to go, like, I applied very quickly to the school program just because, like, by the time I realized it, applications were due. And then I had to make a quick decision on whether I was going to make this really weird left turn change in my life. And I had the thought of, imagine 10 years from now thinking, what would have happened if I tried that? And I really didn't want that, right? Because 10 years from now, I ain't doing this again. I am not making that kind of change again. So this was the time for me to go, yeah, why not? Why not? And I should add too that, like, I think a weird factor in here that pushed the decision for me was the whole pandemic thing. In that, like, for me, I'm strangely in this engineering field. I think to some extent we're all very introverted, but I love people, right? I realized at some point coming out of the deep, dark days of pandemic that the reason I stay on teams so very long is not the success of the product, or, you know, the level of quality of the code, or the proficiency that I have. Like, all of that stuff is totally details. The important thing to me is the people that I work with and the relationships that I built over time. I loved working on the team that I was on in Android, and everybody going home for 2 years in pandemic kind of sucked the joy out of life or out of work life. And coming back out of pandemic, well, there's a hybrid thing, right? A bunch of people moved away.
It's different on the return. Yeah, absolutely.
They're working
it's
remote.
Not quite the same as it used to be.
Yeah. They're in the office part-time. Yeah. So like that triggered the initial realization for me of like, well, this wasn't as fun as it used to be. And how do I do something that would be fun? Do you want to, sorry, go ahead, but do you want to handle some of the comments? I don't know how you drive your show.
Oh yeah.
I'll let you drive.
I drive this show any which way we all decide to together, because there is really no structure. Let's see here. I'm reading through a screen that's pretty far away. Yeah. Dirk says, how reacted your family? Oh yeah. Well, this was actually a question that I did want to ask is, the support that you got from your family. And I imagine, I know that I received an insane amount of support from my wife, in going through what I've gone through. And that's really helped me to commit to what I'm doing right now, to know that, that I'm not thinking about some real out there crazy thing. Like what was the support like in your family for this change?
It was great. I mean, for one thing, like my kids are grown up, mostly gone. I still have a kid in college. They couldn't care less at this point. Like it's my life. They don't care. My wife was supportive to the extreme that she's the one who proposed the program, right? So she knew that I was casting about for what would I do if I didn't do this anymore. She herself had entered a part-time graduate program. Like I said, we really like school, and she decided this is what would make her happy. So she's having a good time in her program. She sees this. She's like, hey, did you think about this? I think the weird part for us is like she's doing a grad school program where she's still living in the house that we have in the Bay Area and, driving into these classes. And for me, that wasn't an option. Like if I wanted to do screenwriting, I was going to, go to LA or New York, or this program was in Chicago. And this was the only one I looked at because it had the comedy focus. I'm like, yeah, but I'd have to go to Chicago for a couple of years. She's like, that's fine. We've been married a very, very long time, and
we're going to be all right.
It's fine.
Right. And like you said, the kids are growing up. It's not like, you're removing yourself from the direct responsibility of a house swirling with the children that you got to get ready in the morning and pick up and be chauffeur and all that kind of stuff.
Right. So I think I immediately made both of our lives, mine and my wife's life, like more dull, in that like our evenings aren't terribly interesting because we don't really have the, the person around to spend them with. Evenings and weekends are more dull, but it's temporary. And I think we were both pursuing a passion for a couple of years.
And it's important. And you both recognize that part, right? That that we in our lives, we are better people. I am a better person when I'm actually pursuing the thing that fires me up, that lights me up, that drives me. Yeah. And to not be able to explore that, actually kind of numbs me a little bit to life, I suppose. Yeah. So yeah.
No, and maybe an introspective person would take a look at the facts and wonder why my wife was finding a program that would send me 2,000 miles away for a couple of years. And maybe I should actually, but I don't really want to look too deeply into that one.
You don't need to, because she knew that was the program.
Yep. Yeah. She knew. Hopefully
you truly want.
You froze or I froze. I don't know which way it went.
Oh, my internet blocked out for a second. Let me repeat that. It's none of that. It's that she knew that looking at that program would give you what fires you up, what you're looking for.
Yes, that is
about you, obviously.
That is obviously the positive way to look at that. So that's the way that I choose to look at it.
I choose to believe that as well. I have no reason not to believe that. Well, that's great. It's awesome in moments of change like this to have someone who is willing to, to not only support you, but also this is a sacrifice that you're both making with each other in order to pursue these things. And it's amazing that you can do that together.
It's a grand adventure. Great. That's how I think of it. It's a grand adventure, especially the whole, living in a city. I've been living in a suburb basically my entire life, certainly for the last many decades working in the Valley. I live way out in the Tri-Valley area and I commute into work, and you get used to it, but it's not fun. So now I get to live in a city and pretend I'm a hip urban dude for a couple of years. I'm not,
And you're
but I
in
get to pretend I am.
Okay, well that's good enough. That's better than me. Are so you're in Chicago now. Have you had much experience, much time in Chicago?
No, we visited here. Well, my wife grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, so I was kind of aware of, bits of it. And then we visited here with the kids when we were doing sort of college visits. And my son, coincidentally, went to the same school where I'm doing screenwriting. He was doing CS here. But then, he was here during COVID, so we never really visited him here because that's not a thing that you did. So yeah, I didn't really know much about it or what I was getting into. So it's all new. But it's good. Turns out Chicago's kind of a nice city.
That's what I've heard. I've never been. I've always wanted to go. I've heard that the winters are crazy cold and windy, and all the usual things that people say about Chicago. I've also heard it's a really cool city.
I found some running groups here. So I discovered during pandemic that I didn't know enough people that weren't associated with my job and my commute, and I wasn't seeing those people anymore. And so I found a running group in town, which turns out to be a really good way to meet people, a non-creepy way to meet strangers, right? Just for socialization, just for having a conversation. Yeah. So I had gotten into running, and then I got into this running group, and then I realized coming out here that was a good way to meet people. So I'm in a couple of running groups here, and then I realized in the fall, then winter comes. How's that going to go? And
so what do you do then?
I came back after the holidays in January. I thought I really need to get used to this. So with one of the groups, we went out. It was 9 below. It was negative 31 with wind chill that day, and we ran for like 3 or 4 miles, and it was fine. It was it was cold. It was really cold, and that was far enough in that. But after you've run in that kind of weather,
totally,
it's like 35 degrees outside, and it feels really nice.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. It's not like you're sitting there in -7, and just freezing your butt off. You're moving, your blood's pumping, your body, your body temperature raises, and it's not nearly as bad. I'm always amazed. My older daughter is, in the last 3 years, actually started during the pandemic as well, really got into swimming. And so she's part of a swim team. She's doing excellent on the swim team. But she can get into cold water like it's nobody's business. Like if you're a swimmer, that's just what you do. Sometimes her practices, are like really early in the morning, 5:30, 6 in the morning. And she just goes there, and sure. It's a warmed, like, it's not bitter ice cold water, but it's not warm either. Like they've heated it up just enough, so that it doesn't hurt when you get in, but they still keep it cool because they want your body to move and, and everything. And so I'm always really impressed by when we commit to something like that, how these challenges that we might think would be real big barriers kind of drift away, especially if you really enjoy it.
Yep. You just gotta suck it up and get used to it.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Let's see here. Okay. So speaking of fitness, cause kind of pulling it a little bit further back to technology. So you are big into running now, really enjoying it. How connected are you to the data that surrounds the fitness that you do? Do you even care about that stuff? I have a hard time caring about fitness data. And maybe that's like a privileged position to be in, that like I don't have a condition that I need to focus on it, but I know everybody has a different opinion on this. I'm just not that like jazzed about like collecting my information on my fitness. Like I have no interest in going back to it and going, oh yeah, my heart was beating really fast there. Like I just don't care. What is your take on this?
I'm very mixed. I do collect it. So I wear a running watch, and I use, I use a Garmin app. So it collects in the Garmin, database somewhere in the cloud, and then it streams it over to Strava, and so all of that stuff pops up on Strava, and there's some social aspect to that, so you get these kudos from people that you run with, but I don't do anything with the data. So I feel naked without the watch on. I feel like somehow I'm not getting credit for a run if I'm not acquiring data on the run. On the other hand, I don't do anything with it, right? Like I track the data for how far and how fast, and I track the data for like when I do a weights workout or whatever, but like I don't do anything. And Strava is constantly asking me like, hey, you could do more with Strava. I'm like, I could do a lot less with Strava and still be happy. I don't understand what we're supposed to do with this information. I look down at my watch during a run and it says unproductive. I'm like, well, I didn't really need to know that from you, watch.
Thanks a lot, watch. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave you on the nightstand next time I go for a run. How about that?
Teach you a lesson.
Yeah, so my wife is in the fitness industry, and she of course is very dialed into all this stuff. And I had a conversation with her a couple of weeks ago about this. I've got the OnePlus Watch 2 is the watch that I've been wearing lately. Yes, I've been cheating on my Pixel Watch 2 with the OnePlus Watch 2. But I force myself to use the fitness stuff because I do go to the gym and I am wearing the watch, so I might as well turn it on and everything. But
Yep.
but I, like I said, I struggle to find the parts of it that are like necessary for me other than just collecting data. And she put it into good terms, at least as one example, like how fast does your heart rate recover? She's like that, the recovery of when you end an exercise and, how fast that comes down to a more stabilized spot, that can actually tell you a lot about your health. And so I guess when I think of it that way, okay, I can get it a little bit further there, but I guess, these devices,
Yeah.
like, I suppose they should be telling me that my recovery is not fast enough or is good, or I don't know. I just don't spend the time with it, I suppose.
I don't know. I mean, there's so much there, but I think it depends on what your goals are too. Like for me,
Yeah.
I'd like to stay in shape. I'd like to be able to run with people. I'd like to have, what I consider to be a decent pace and length and, to do the events that I'd like to. And other than that, it really doesn't matter. Like I'm not trying to set a record here. I'm not trying to like constantly improve, and so the amount to which I track the data and then use it to analyze, like, how could I do better? Like, I don't care. I mean, as long as I'm relatively healthy,
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like I'm a pretty healthy person anyways. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I guess you could track. I guess it'll be, maybe this is important information long-term. And if I've tracked, then at least it's there stored away somewhere.
It'll
Do you
be
do any
in the
sort of
cloud
like
once you need it,
sleep tracking or anything like that?
So I have a Pixel Watch and I will occasionally use it, mostly so that it yells at me in the morning and told me I didn't sleep well.
Which
I don't.
would you have woken up that morning and felt like you didn't sleep well if it hadn't told you that? I don't know. I don't know that I would have.
I mean, I started using it at night because a friend of mine on the Android team like was really into his watch, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's really good at sleep tracking," and I use that. I'm like, it's like the Garmin stuff for running. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this information. It's not like I'm going to go back to bed. Like, I'm awake now. I'm sorry you're yelling at me, but I don't really have a choice in this.
Exactly. Okay, cool. We're on the same page then, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat here had asked about the book.
Yeah.
And I'm scrolling to find that.
Are you working on any new books at the moment or just the new bits? It's all about the bits.
If you were to work on a new book, I mean, maybe you are, but if you were, what would it be about?
So one of my thoughts in coming into the program, as I said, I had zero experience in screenwriting, and I'm interested in screenwriting now, but more as a way of learning how to tell long form stories. So I think if I do nothing else out of this program, I should back up a step. A typical pipeline for this kind of program, whether you're in New York or LA or here in Chicago, is, and then you go to LA and you sleep in your car and you get an unpaid internship and you fetch coffee for the executive associate producer.
Sacrifice.
For, potentially years, right? And you get like crummy jobs, and then eventually, hopefully you get staffed and constantly, building up your network. So, people, maybe you can get somebody to finally read your scripts. And then eventually you're staffed. And like, that's the way the business works. I have like less than zero interest in that. Like I at some point, my fuse runs out. And so I'm not going to do the typical LA thing. Also, my wife is saying, yeah, Chicago's great. I'm not moving to LA.
I'm not moving to LA.
So I don't know what you think you're doing, but I'm not moving to LA.
Look, so I support you, but to a point.
Yeah,
we're not going to LA. Okay, that's my barrier.
So maybe I'll do something with screenwriting in some reality that I don't understand now. But if nothing else, I will hopefully get better at the ability to come up with long form story ideas. Like I would say all of my writing to date is either nonfiction, like the history book, which, I mean, that story, it didn't tell itself. It was a fair amount of effort to figure out how to tell complicated story like that.
It's like a puzzle, fitting all the pieces into
very
place.
Much so. Yeah. Where like all the parallel pieces happening and how do you make that not totally confusing? Or, the programming books, obviously nonfiction. I write a bunch of humor stuff, some of which is short stories, but I would say everything I write is basically exploring a premise and then you're done, right? And that is not what you need in a novel. I've always wanted to write a novel, but I've never known how to get from here to there? Like, what is the long story arc that can take you all the way through, or the multiple parallel arcs? And so one of the things I want to explore in this program is coming up with ideas that do that, and then writing through the scripts. And it's in a different form. It will be in movies and, you know, pilots and TV episodic stuff, whatever. But it's all storytelling. And so one of the ideas is maybe I come out of this program, and if I don't end up doing stuff in the screenwriting domain, maybe it's just, you know, actually trying to tackle the novel. So I would say the next book I would hope to work on is something in that realm. I don't have anything in the plans right now. I have a couple of ideas, but I need some of these skills in order to develop those ideas. But in the meantime, I have a lot of homework. So I don't think I have time to work on books, because I have a lot of scripts to write.
There you go. That's good practice. That gets you warmed up, gets the muscles, the writing a book muscle.
I hope so.
Up.
It is very different. Like I was, you know, learning along the way that like the way that you tell a story in screenwriting is necessarily visual, right? So a lot of the stuff that you would do to describe a scene in prose, you don't do that. You very briefly talk about, you know, what's the situation in the room, where the characters are, and you don't tell them where to put the camera. You don't tell them, you know, the kinds of things that you want the actors to do. That's the actor's job, right? Or the director's job. And so it's very terse. It's very concise. That's why, you know, scripts that cover an hour and a half to 2 hours are like 100 pages long, right? Like 90 to 120 pages is a hour and a half to 2 hour thing. And that's 120 pages with a lot of white space. It's because a lot of the details of how to tell the story are left as visual puzzles for other people to help you solve when they're actually producing this. And so there's a transition, you know, either coming from writing books or going back to writing books where, but you need a lot of those details for the readers that you don't need for the viewers. Right?
Well, you've already done something that I highly respect out of anybody that's written a book. Like when I think about the idea, like I don't even know what a book would be that I would ever write, but it's one of those, like those challenges that, oh man, if I could pull that off just as like an I did that sort of thing, that would be amazing. But the kind of the what are the words? The words are escaping me. Your ability to organize all of that information and then synthesize it and put it in order into a way that, you know, creates a book that's enjoyable to read and that you understand beginning to end and everything. That whole process is just fascinating to me. And I just have a lot of respect for anyone who's gone through that and has a book to show for it, because that's no small feat. I mean, you've now read a book. That's pretty amazing. That puts you far ahead of, you know, so many other people that have never done that. So if you want to write a fiction book, like I believe that you will, like you've already kind of done the first hard part, which is to write a book. So.
At least, I have at least the notion in my head that I can get through taking on a project and finishing it. Like the closure of going through a project like that, I think is an important proof point, but it is a very, very different skill. Like you got at the heart of the matter. I would say the most complicated thing in writing androids was exactly that. Like, how do you take all of this information and synthesize it so that people can understand it? Even like real humans can understand it, not just engineers. Like engineers may know how an OS goes together, but how do you explain it in a way that, you know, non-engineers can actually understand the pieces and how they fit together, and how the people worked on this, especially in these inherently multi-threaded parallel projects that we all work on. And that was what took a lot of the 4 years between like doing the research and the interviews and actually coming out with the thing at the end, was, you know, rewriting and reorganizing and re-editing, and how do I start this thing off, and, you know, all of that stuff I think was the tricky bit. And those were important lessons, and I think that's important in any kind of storytelling. But the actual narrative was done for me. The narrative of Android is the creation
is what
of
it
Android.
is.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
All I needed to do was sort of be the storyteller of someone else's story, as opposed to the novel thing. It's like, but I need to create something from scratch and to make it compelling. And so I don't have the proof point yet that I can do that. Hopefully writing, you know, script after script will help do that for me.
That makes a lot of sense. Nonfiction has at least goalposts that
Yes, right.
delineate where this story goes. You know that this happened then, and you know that this happened then. Fill in the details that close the gaps between those 2 points.
Yep.
With a novel, yeah, like again, it's a skill that I don't entirely understand. It's not like I haven't written, creative writing projects, and I have some embarrassing ones from when I was a kid, stashed away that my parents, were always very proud of and everything. But
it's called blackmail.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it absolutely is. But just like this idea, like living life and going, oh, I've got an idea for a book. It involves this person. I'm going to sit down, this person in this scenario. I'm going to sit down and write it. And then to suddenly fill out the detail that makes that blink of an eye story that just flashed through your mind makes sense over 500 pages. Like the ability to like build that out and make sense of it and enjoyable. It's super, super impressive to me.
Yep.
Is
Very
writing...
daunting.
Yeah. Is writing how you play? Like if creativity equals play, how do you play? Is that writing? Is it stand up? Is it maybe it's video games? I don't know what it is. What is that for you?
There's different things for different moods, but writing is certainly part of it. Like having a funny idea, like, you see a funny sign, you see something that I call it willful misinterpretation, where you see something happen or you hear somebody say something and like, that's not what it meant. But if you reinterpret it this other way, it's a really funny juxtaposition of, people and environment and situations. And if like taking that funny idea and writing it out, whether it's a small thing like a tweet or, a short story or a satire piece, is really satisfying to me. And then, polishing it, like getting it to that polished point and then publishing it so that, other people can see this thing, even if they don't read it, but the taking that extra step of like, this is something that I am happy for people to read if they want to, I think is very satisfying to me.
Yeah, indeed. Wow. That's pretty awesome. Did coding ever feel like play to you, working in the coding environment?
Different aspects of it.
Like I'm not a developer,
yeah,
but I do see, like when I look at the art of coding, like there's a creative quality to this, right?
Yeah.
You're working within a certain specified language, a syntax and everything, but you can get really creative. I mean, otherwise these things wouldn't exist. Does that feel like creativity the way writing does for you, or is that different?
It can. It triggers, I think, different parts of the brain and different parts of the creative brain as well. I totally agree. It is creative. I think people on the outside don't think of it like that. I think they think we're just typing the whole time and doing super boring stuff. But I think at its best, software in particular, or, engineering, computer engineering overall, is puzzle solving. Like when a really meaty problem comes up and you just have to like pick at it to kind of figure out what's going on here. So like the last couple of years, I was working on this like curved shapes and morphing stuff and super interesting problems. I had to go back and learn a bunch of math. And then you sort of go, well, I need to calculate like where this point would be like over here. And then you're just kind of playing around with equations and functions and trig and geometry. And like, that is very satisfying. It's like, you're banging your head against the wall for a while and then something clicks and you're like, oh, that was fun. Or the best, you've probably had this, like, I think this is common, not just in engineering, but like you cannot solve this problem. You're just going over and over and over again and you can't solve it. And then in the middle of the night in your sleep, your brain goes, oh, that's it. And you wake up and go, oh yeah. And sometimes you wake up and you go, no, that's insane. That was a dumb dream and I should ignore that. But sometimes you wake up and you're like, no, that was actually the key. Yeah. It's like the ping pong ball bouncing on the goldfish bowls at the fair, where it's just like, it's looking for a landing. And then in your sleep, it finds one. Goes,
so in your dreams, you have solved certain coding problems.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I remember this happening in grad school once with like a really hard final in like an NP complete, like some theoretical thing. Yeah. And it's happened several times in my career where it's like, you're just noodling at a problem. And what you really need to do is just step back. And it's that stepping back of like going and releasing sleeping overnight. It's like, you need to release the tension and just allow your brain to do what it likes to do and creatively explore.
It's like losing your wallet. You lose your wallet, You look in all the places, concerted effort. Damn it, I can't find my wallet. All right, I'm going to buy a new one. The second you release it and you buy a new one, you find your damn wallet.
Yes.
I can speak from personal experience on that one.
Hey,
well,
we're about 5 minutes out. I didn't know if we wanted to answer any of the more.
Sure. Is there one that you're seeing that you want to?
I haven't. Let's see.
Question. Let's see here.
Dev relationship team does. I mean, very quickly, like the stuff that I did in DevRel or the stuff that DevRel did overall was basically like, there are the people that write the technology. There are the people that can explain how the technology works and how people should use it. There's a cross section of those people. And in the ideal case, the people that work on DevRel are that. Like my favorite kind of people, or I think the best approach to DevRel is, if you're a good engineer and you're good at articulating how things work, like that is the perfect DevRel person, right? So how do you take knowledge of how things work and then articulate it in the form of articles or videos or talks, or just answering questions and being with the community, such that you help people understand and you engage them, right? Because there's a certain amount of human interactivity that I think is healthy when you're in this thing. Like you're motivating people to go, oh yeah, I want to understand more about this thing. Let's see.
Yeah, you're in a position to let people up about that. Yeah. Did you see the eclipse?
I did at the top of my building. I went up for coffee, and then there was this huge crowd there up at the top of my building because we have like windows out onto the world up there. And it turns out I showed up in the middle of the eclipse. Somebody loaned me their black glasses. I looked up and I saw there was an eclipse, and I got my coffee and I went back to my apartment.
Like, okay, that happened. All right.
Yeah.
How much of an eclipse was it there? Was it still partial, or was it a total?
It was partial. It was not totality in Chicago. I think that was further south from here.
Okay.
It was probably 90% when I looked at it. I have a funny relationship with eclipses because it's like, oh, that's interesting, but it's also Boolean geometry. Like, it's like, I don't quite know why we make this big a deal about it. Like, I think some of the photography is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting in totality. Yep, the light changed, but this is how it works. There's a moon.
It's just the fact that, I mean, I would agree with you. I don't get as like jazzed as a lot of people that surround me seem to when it comes to the eclipse. I did get the glasses though this time, totally last minute, like the day before. I was like, I should probably get the glasses, and brought my daughter out there. It was like a third of the sun was covered where we are here, so it was hardly anything. But I think people get excited because it's that thing that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
That's, I think, at the core of it. Well, and I mean, beyond that, some people just get out of their minds excited over anything astronomy and all that. So, but I think really it's the thing that doesn't happen very often, and it's happening now. We've got to see it, right? Yeah, it's cool nonetheless. Real quick before I let you go, can you humor me on one thing, which could be totally silly, but I thought of it, and I think it would be a fun way for us to make fools of ourselves. Okay, this is the Chet the Chet smirk, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I'm showing you because I think that I can do it, but it might take me a second. So I'd like to outsmirk you. Well, no, not outsmirk you. I'd like to smirk along with you, if you don't mind. Are you open to that?
I'm open to that. I'll have to. Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to work because I can hardly see the screen, but let's see here. I have to like refer to the.
Yep. Pop it up. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you want to try the other side?
Oh, I couldn't do the other. Can you? Yeah, no, I can't do the other side. Okay. Can you frown? Can you do like a true, like, That's a good grimace. I like it. All right. Thanks for humoring me on that. I saw the picture and I was like, this is the picture that always comes up when I search Chet on Google. So I just had to, find some reason to make him do it on the show.
So a little bit of insider Google stuff. I don't talk about insider stuff. But I will say that they were changing badges to, some new system near when I was going to leave. and you were supposed to submit a new photo for the new badge if you want a new headshot. And so I did one of those, and it was a little more mild than my previous one. My original badge was, an extreme version of this thing. And I said, well, here's the thing. And they said, well, that's against policy. You're supposed to make a straight face. And so I'm like, okay, well then keep my extreme face. That's the way.
Google. So this was your first badge, right?
Right. So that has been my badge the entire time I was at Google. Yes. The security person said, do you want to retake that picture? No. Yeah.
No, this is exactly the reason that I did this, because I want it forever and ever.
Yep.
Chet, so much fun. I'm so happy that we got the chance to talk and do this. Thank you for joining me on this little show-ish thing on my YouTube channel.
Great to join you. Thanks for asking. Good luck with all of your shows. So you have this one, your office hours, which
which is super, super low key, just kind of relaxed thing. I'm doing AI Inside with Jeff Jarvis. So with the artificial intelligence, and then doing Android Faithful, of course, with the All About Android team. So we're doing that every Tuesday, and then and whatever else comes up. I'm just playing around with ideas. So
nice.
This is kind of part of that.
It's it's good to still see and hear you on the airwaves, digital airwaves.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Chet. It's really nice talking with you. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and good luck with everything going on being a student. And I'll look forward to updates online as far as where you're, the scripts you're writing and all that kind of stuff.
I look forward to updating people. I'm not shy about telling people what's up. We'll see where it goes.
Well, you're an awesome person. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Chet.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
Okay. Hold the line 1 second. I'm going to end the stream.